Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Product School webinar. Thanks for joining us today. Just in case you didn't know, Product School teaches product management, coding, data analytics, digital marketing, and blockchain courses online and at our 15 campuses worldwide. On top of that, every week we offer some amazing local product management events and host online webinars, Ask Me Anything sessions, and live streams. Head over to productschool.com after this webinar to check them out. Oops. And today, we have an awesome guest presenting. I'd like to introduce you to Aaron Orr. Aaron is an accomplished product management professional. He's experienced in bringing new products to market and improving current product performance tailored specifically to meet customer needs. Before becoming the senior product manager at Shutterfly, he was working with Ancestry.com. Feel free to leave any questions for Aaron in the comments, and we'll be sure to address them at the end. Without further ado, let's welcome Aaron. Thanks for joining us today, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks, Dan, for the good warm welcome. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So are we ready to roll with this?
Yep, go ahead. You can start sharing your screen.
Right out there. It's really a pleasure to be here. So I want to take this opportunity to talk about something that's actually pretty important to me, that's a regular part of my everyday job, and that is solving problems. So problems are all around us, and I find myself in one of two roles usually, where either I'm taking an offensive position with a problem, where in this one it's more of a proactive, I'm actively developing a feature or an entirely new product to address a market need or problem. Or we'll find ourselves in a defensive mode where there's a bug or some kind of issue that's hitting our current problem. And so in liberating those, I need to jump in and understand the real problem. Is it really a big issue, and help prioritize it? But in either of these things, it's expected to me to help drive a solution to the problem. So we're going to jump into this. There are a lot of different problems or classifications that we could talk about, but I'm going to focus on two here, and we'll break these things down. But you can look at problems as one, it's something that's broken or difficult. This one is obvious. And the other one I had a hard time articulating it real clearly, but it's you were fine before X existed, but now that you have it, you can't even imagine not having it. We'll kind of give an example of that. So the first one is, these are some more obvious problems that they still require some research, but you can articulate them pretty easily. Let's look at a conversion funnel, for example. So let's say you've launched a new app, you're getting downloads, people are installing your app, but very few of them are actually pulling out their wallet and making in-app purchases. So the problem there is, where are people falling out? What can we do to broaden the funnel? And that becomes your task to identify where the exact problem lies to fix this funnel. Another example of the problem is that it wasn't ever a problem before. A fun example of this, I've got a pager right here. Don't know how old my audience is here, but this is this old device that actually, my brother is a doctor, he still uses one, but it just receives like an alphanumeric message. You can't return a call or a message from it at all. Well, back in high school in the 1990s, I remember one of my best friends got one of these, feeling like super cool and techy because he had the latest tech, and we'd give him a hard time. We'd go find a phone, our home phone, and call and leave like some kind of cryptic numeric message, and we'd do it often. He'd get upset because he was pushing on his messages. I think he got like 200 messages a month on it before he hit his limit. Anyway, back then I kind of thought it was silly because you couldn't return a call. But if you were to ask me, like, if I ever imagined something like the phones we have today, I couldn't have even described it. The capabilities of our phones today is so much greater than what we had before. But now that we're so used to our phones, if we were to go without it, it's actually a real problem. Similar, like, imagine the days before automobiles. These people got along fine, but now that we've got automobiles, cars, we can't imagine going without it. So that's those are problems that are more visionary or life-changing. So in either of these cases, though, there's a problem to be solved. And this is a look at CBI Insights. They did a study of why startups fail. And so if you go way up here to the top, you can see that by far the number one reason that these companies fail is because they failed to, there was no market need, or they failed to address a real problem or pain point. And you scale this down to individual projects that we're working on, it's really important to identify a real problem that we're solving rather than something that is just, it can go away. So let's jump into this. It's really important that we don't put the cart before the horse, use the adage. But in this, that we don't just jump ahead and decide on a solution before really understanding the problem. And likewise, that we don't just assume that we fully understand the problem without putting in the due diligence. It's really important that we are understanding and articulating a problem so that we can solve it. So digging in, there's three areas I would like to focus on. Here's the first, and that's to spend time to find and understand real problems. This one might be fun. Can you see anything wrong here? I hope so. This is a picture I took at my kids' elementary school. I went into the office to check out my fourth grader, and the office lady asked me to go to the computer and put in his name to be able to, and then she would go check him out of his class. And this is what I saw. Ironically, that little text area by all the arrows that have been taped onto the screen is the primary functionality of this application. So I think the real question is, how did this happen? I would speculate here that there was a big list of all the functions that this application needed to be able to deliver on, but without really understanding how it was going to be used and what problem it was trying to solve, an interface was built. And it just so happened that the number one action that you want to do is very hidden in the corner. I talked to the office, and they don't use any of the other primary buttons up here. They're using this one in the far corner. So in trying to ease problems in the office, they actually created new problems. Another example you guys might be familiar with is in iOS 12, Apple made a change to the FaceTime app where they hid the flip camera button behind a menu. It's actually quite comical. If you look at there's several forums where people are asking, where'd my button go? I need to be able to flip the camera. And Apple figured out quickly, and in 12.11, they released an update and brought that button back to the forefront. But I guess that begs the question of what problem were they trying to solve? Now, it might have just been that the designers wanted a more sleek UX, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but if we don't understand how our customers are using our product and what problems the applications really are solving for the customers, then we ought to be very careful before we make changes. We need to understand that first. So going back several years back, I worked for a company called eInstruction in Scottsdale, Arizona. They're a tech company that with a mission to improve student and to improve learning in the classroom. My job was to oversee the K through 12 products, and we introduced a pretty neat technology in the classroom where there was teachers had a teacher tool where they could present. Students had individual clickers where they could immediately give feedback to the teacher, and they could tailor their teaching based on immediate feedback from the students. But as part of working there, we did a series of interviews and surveys trying to get information from our customers. But the most valuable was Contextual Inquiry, where every month I was flying to different schools throughout the country, and I would just quietly sit in the back of the room and watch class after class be taught. And it was amazing. It was super valuable, the information that I got. In fact, you could see problems all around that we never saw in interviews and we never saw in surveys, because I don't think that the students or the teacher even saw the problems. They'd become immune to them in some way. They'd figured out another way that works, but with a fresh set of eyes and also knowing some things that were available to build, it was just eye-opening to see what kind of problems they were dealing with, and led to a lot of ideas and also streamlining of our existing products. So this is just one example of ways that we can get out in the field in front of our customers or behind them and be that fly on the wall. If you've not tried this, I really would encourage that you do and make it a priority in your efforts to understand your customer and the problems you're solving. So moving along, I want to talk a little bit about hearing versus listening. So this directly applies to learning about a problem and customer needs. So looking at them side by side, hearing is accidental. It's involuntary, effortless. Have you ever been in a meeting and been checking an email and found yourself, and then you hear like your name, someone had asked you a question, but you didn't pick up on the question? Super embarrassing and stressful if your boss is in the room, or you just look bad. Or if you ever try to talk to someone while they're texting somewhere on a Facebook feed, you just don't feel like you're getting through. They're hearing you, they're hearing the noise, but you question it. I have to admit that a problem here, where a common area where I'm not listening, but I'm hearing, is I'll meet new people and get their name, but my mind's thinking about the next thing I'm going to say, rather than really listening to them. And within a second, I've already forgotten their name. And I think that's the difference between listening and hearing, where listening is really focused, voluntary, intentional. You're honing in on them. Listening leads to understanding. There's a desire to understand when you listen. And if while you're listening, if you're not fully understanding, it prompts questions, which then lead to understanding. So just recently on a large project that we were doing at Shutterfly, we had identified a problem, but we didn't have a good grasp on it. And we had an idea of how we wanted to address it, but we just needed to better understand the real problem that this would solve, or backing up further than this, like what problem are we really trying to solve for the customer? And so this is just an image of a observation room. I was sitting behind the one-way glass, and we had an interviewer and our participants coming into the room, and we'd hand them our products, ask them questions while I would just sit and watch. And it was really interesting when the participant was handed our product, before they even opened their mouth or said anything, just their facial expressions, the way that they held the product, told us a lot about their initial reaction. And then when they were asked about the product or how they'd use it, the tone in their voice, the energy behind it, really, really brought a lot out. For example, like statements like, "This is nice." If you were to write it down, "This is nice" could be taken as a positive, like people like your product. But if it's said with lacking any energy, it's almost like they're kind of trying to appease, but yeah, this is nice. Where it's really important to be able to pick up on that tone, to be able to see if that tone is not right, you know that you've not quite met a need. You're not quite addressing the real problem. There's other observations that are really interesting, where you'll put a participant in front of your software or an app or whatever it is and ask them to perform a task. And it's really common when it becomes difficult for that person to complete that task for them to blame themselves. I'm just not used to this. But if we're truly listening and we're looking for that problem, we'll recognize that the participant isn't the problem at all. There's a problem with our interface if they're not getting it, or the way that they were introduced to it, whatever. There could be a number of problems. But through this, like putting energy into the listening will really help us identify the problems. And this was invaluable to us in the way that we were able to identify some just new angles that the solution that we'd kind of brainstormed about could address. We identified real problems that customers had that made us tweak the angle here. And so we took a lot away from it ahead of our launch. We actually tweaked the project quite a bit to address the feedback that we got here. And it's been a successful launch since. So while you're in these while you're trying to listen, a big important part of it is asking the right questions. So believe it or not, speaking, if you're asking the right kind of questions, is a good form of listening. Two examples here is that we want to avoid leading questions. So look at these examples. What do you enjoy most about this product? Or versus, tell me about your experiences with this product. The first one, what do you enjoy most about this product, is quite leading, and it's going to encourage like more positive feedback. If you were to take the inverse of that, what's your least favorite thing about this product? You're going to encourage a negative leaning to the feedback. And so you want to try and keep that open and let honest feedback come by not leading it. Another example could be loaded questions. Have you stopped exercising? How do you answer this? So if I were to say yes, I've stopped exercising, that implies that I used to exercise, but I no longer do. Or if I answered no, that implies that I used to exercise, but I'm still exercising. Sorry, I got confused by that. But a better approach may be a 2 or 3 phased question, like, do you exercise? Have you exercised in the past? Why do you exercise? Where you're not loading it, you're prompting honest feedback where they don't feel like they have to stay within these certain bounds. So moving on, those last two things we talked about, like the listening and the really doing the homework to understand the problem, are all the foundation for facilitating a great solution. I use the word facilitate. We'll come to that in just a minute. But the good news is that product managers, we don't have to have all the ideas. We don't have to be this idea machine that just pumps out really wonderful ideas and deliver on it. But the bad news is that ideas are coming from everywhere, and actually really good ideas. Some not so good, but there are actually some really good ideas that come. Some come with a lot of pressure from executives that feel very strongly about things, and there's just pressure to hear other ideas. But the problem is that not all of those ideas really align with the research that you've done to address the exact problem that you're trying to solve. And this is where, if we're smart, we can really ease our burden on trying to identify that solution. And so facilitate, if we look at the meaning of that, it's to make easy or to make easier. The example that this Google definition gives is that schools were located on the same campus to facilitate a shared sharing of resources. So imagine maybe it's a library or a set of books that the schools can share to ease the financial burden or whatever it may be. But the facilitate is to make something easier. And so this is where our communication becomes very, very important. We need to tell everyone around us, all of our stakeholders, the people that are touching the project, that are involved, they need to understand why we're building X. What's the problem we're trying to solve? They need to understand that background. And as much as possible, where it makes sense, involve them in that process of the learning. So the reason for this is that as soon as people can throw out ideas, but as soon as they understand the real problem, they might be able to filter those ideas or steer those ideas or be inspired with ways to solve that problem. And one of the great book, if you're not familiar with Start With Why from Simon Sinek, it's definitely worth a read or to listen to some of his talks. But to get to the end, I'm not quoting him, but to summarize it, it's that inspiration really comes after understanding why. It's been proven that when you have developers writing your code, that they're much more inspired if they understand why. If you're just dictating, this is design, it needs to function this is the delivery date, you may build up a lot of frustration with the developers. They may not be inspired on it, and they may just not enjoy it or deliver a very good end result because they don't understand. Where if you back up and they understand really what they're trying to solve, they're going to have ideas that will enhance what you're trying to build. And they'll also understand things like performance, edge cases. All of that opens up to their mind by them understanding why. And so this begs the question that if a developer does better when they understand why, couldn't we assume that understanding why for a product manager is highly important as well? That I know for myself, if I understand why we're doing something and there's real meaning behind what I'm trying to drive and solve, I'm much more motivated, much more creative, and willing to put in the effort and the excitement behind it. So we could have just skipped all the slides and come here, but in short, it's very, very important that we identify and understand real problems. I want to emphasize real. It's very, very common that we've got backlogs of bugs or backlogs of feature improvements or these things that really aren't problems, that we ought to just be honest and deprioritize these and put our focus on the real problems that are going to make an impact. And that along the way that we're sharing the learnings that we're getting from our customers with our team. So I have to say that the thing that keeps me in product management is that piece of really understanding what a customer's or a market need is and diving into those problems. I love to be able to listen to them. I love looking at the data all around it about how they're used and see things that maybe they're not seeing as solutions. So hope that this is helpful. I know it's much of a review, but I've hoped I've sparked just some excitement around making sure that we're doing this in the right order, that we're putting the effort in to understand a problem, and then that we're communicating that all the way through as we identify that solution. So I'll turn it back over to Dan, but I'll hang around here to answer questions for a minute. Thanks, guys.
Hey there, Aaron. Thank you for that awesome presentation. That was really good.
Oh, thank you.
So we don't have any questions in our comments just yet, but I'll give it 30 seconds here just to let some people maybe think of what they wanted to think. And I do have a question for you, though. One question we like to ask all of our speakers is, if you had any final advice or any one piece of wisdom to give an aspiring product manager, what would that be?
So to an aspiring product manager, I would just become customer obsessed. So as you're in anything that you're approaching, keep that at the center. There becomes a lot of distractions. There's just a lot of busy work that as you get into product management that pushes that stuff aside. And to just remember that ultimately, like, your job as a product manager is to meet that customer, the balance of that customer and business need. And so as obviously you need to understand the business objectives you have, but knowing that customer, you're the guy at your company that needs to best be able to speak to that. So that's my amazing wisdom.
Awesome. Thank you. Great advice. I got a question here. Here we go. It just popped away. Sorry. What's your favorite question to ask a user when they first touch your product, apart from what was your experience with the product?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess one of my favorite questions is just to ask them what they would do with this. I want to understand real quick, like if it's a meeting a practical need. I would by the way, in these questions, it is really important to really think through the questions in advance so that they're open and honest. But it's so important to be able to build a trust with the person you're talking about. And so you want to be real personal. Just talk about yourself a little bit, get it going, and make them feel like they're open so that they can just like let them tear it apart. But I love asking what they're even going to do with it, because so many products look cool, but then when they like, well, I don't know what I'll do with that, I'll just kind of put it aside. Anyway.
Awesome. Thank you. So one last question here. Do you have any tips for preparing a product management portfolio?
Oh, that's good. So, I guess that I'm not quite sure how to answer. I'd love to understand like what, if you've dabbled in product management or had some experience, but I would say that early on, as you have even if you're not into product management yet, if you have product management related experiences, that you try to articulate those wins. Like if you can articulate what the goal was that you were after and what the ultimate achievement was, and if you met that goal and what the learnings were along the way, that's really important. I personally have a portfolio that I've kind of been adding to over time, that as we launch different features or projects or whatnot, that it talks about the goal, what the target is, how we actually did, and what the key learnings are. So I think that you can do that at small scale, as much as you're involved, to just kind of be measuring yourself and document that in a clean way.
Great, thank you. So I think that's all of our another one just popped up here. So do you have experience with startup environments where they're still trying to navigate and figure out the product market fit or product customer fit? How do you face that when the organization is still trying to distill the why?
Yeah, so no, I've not worked for a startup, and so I'm not going to pretend to answer it in a startup way, but I will say that just very recently on my plate, we launched a brand new product. It launched just a couple months ago, but we're still kind of wondering if we've achieved product market fit. And like ultimately, like the way that you can know that is, are customers coming back? Are they getting, like for ours, it's a repeat purchase, but like are they coming back, or are they like telling other people about it? Have we switched the gear where we don't have to market so hard, but where other people are telling you about it? And so the things that we're teeing up right now to do are actually really similar to what we just talked about earlier, where we had a survey that's going out that's asking some very like specific targeted questions about people's reaction to it. And we also are using usertesting.com, where we're conducting a series of interviews. We can just get people's reaction, better understand how they did it, and then really asking that question like, are you going to buy again, or did you share this with someone else for them to buy it? Because that's my best understanding of where you achieve product market fit. So I hope that helps, but I've not felt that same pressure in a startup environment.
Awesome, thank you so much. Here we go. Here's another one. How to identify if a product is already in the market for state or not. In the market for state or not. How to identify if a product is already in the market for state or not.
For state or not? I'm not quite following that.
I'm not sure as well what this question means. Product is already.
Yeah, maybe they'll comment, but obviously, like you're at the same time as you're doing customer research, you're very much studying direct competitors, and also like they might be dotted line products that are similar to you. You're trying to keep a handle on those, but anyway, I can't quite answer the question.
Market fit. Oh, okay. Here we go. How to identify if a product is already in the market fit state or not.
Oh. You know, can you look at virality, or can you look at like how much as a competing product becoming like that household name for it as you're competing with that? Like, you know, like if you could become a household name, or if people are sharing it, I mean, it really echoes that company has become product market fit. Look at Clorox. It's a company name for bleach, or I mean, so I guess that would be the ultimate indication, but you can boil it down to even just if you can understand, like if people are talking about it, sharing about it on social media, what's the reaction people are having to the product?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I think that wraps up today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today, Aaron. It was a great pleasure having you on the channel.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Good luck with your endeavors.
Awesome. So before we go, I wanted to give you guys all some more information on our upcoming courses and events, so you have the resources to become a product manager. Product School offers part-time courses for anyone ready to take their career to the next level. Our product management, coding, data analytics, digital marketing, and blockchain courses are taught by industry experts working at companies like Google and Facebook. And in addition to that, we offer weekly online and on-site events at our 15 campuses across the US and UK and Canada. So if you're located near a campus, make sure you stop by one of our weekly events every Wednesday and Thursday. Also, you can find us on social media at Product School, and be sure to keep up with the latest product management content at the product blog at productschool.com. Thank you all for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day or night, and have a great day. See you.